All right, Rebecca Tershak here, and this is my flute video demo. There are three parts of the flute: the head joint, the body, and the foot joint. To assemble the flute, you're going to take the head joint and insert it into the body, making sure that it is in line with the keys. It's also important to note that many beginner flutes will have an offset G key. Do not line it up with that, line it up with the other keys. And then you take the foot joint, connect it as well, and then line it up with this bottom key. The rod should be right in the middle of the key. Make sure that when you're putting the instrument together, not to grab the rod super hard or press down on the keys really hard, just to make sure you're not bending or twisting anything. Be really gentle when you're putting together the flute. All right, hand position on the flute. You're going to want to make sure that the flute is on two main points, one being right here and then one being your right hand thumb. Your fingers are going to be on 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, pinky. And then sometimes you'll use this pinky depending on the note. For your beginners, you're going to want to tell them to put their thumb on the long key until they start using B-flat thumb, which will not be until they start learning scales. And with the flute, you're going to have it parallel to the ground. So you don't want any of this, you don't want any of this. Oftentimes, beginners will like to play like this, or rest their arm on the chair next to them, or slouch when they play. Make sure that they're sitting up nice and tall with their flute parallel to the ground. You're going to need to make sure that they're always sitting up nice and tall, allowing themselves to get as much air as they possibly can, because it's hard to get in a nice breath of air when you're slouched over. And with the flute, of all instruments, you need to have a lot of air. To form the flute embouchure, you're going to want to practice with your students, having them put their finger up to their mouth instead of their flute, and tell them to go, hmm. It should be nice and relaxed with a little opening that you can produce with the sound P, like in the word put. So put. You're going to want that kind of embouchure formation. Common mistakes beginners face is that they make their embouchure more drawn out than it needs to be. So a lot of the time I'll see students, instead of going, they'll be going, and their chin isn't flat like it needs to be. The flute is an instrument that needs lots of air behind the sound, and a lot of the times students will not put sufficient air behind the sound, and their sound will go flat and they won't produce a clear tone. So a lot of the times, this is what students will do. When really you want a nice, consistent air stream. With lots of air behind it. A good idea for students would be to just start them on the head joint and have them practice. Have them practice making a sound with only the head joint, and then attach the rest of the flute. To articulate on the flute, you have a couple different options. For staccato articulations, or just for a very strong attack, you want to use two. And then for a nice smooth legato attack, you want to use do. So, common mistakes beginners face is that they want to hoo and ha into their instrument, and even when you want to produce a nice soft articulation, you think do, not hoo or ha. So this would be an example of two, and this would be an example of do. Oftentimes you'll hear beginners doing some of this. And you hear an airy attack without much clarity. The flute is an instrument that uses lots of vibrato. So to produce vibrato, you're going to use your abdominal muscles and think of a car battery starting as you do your vibrato. So first do it without the flute. So you'll go, and you should be able to see your stomach moving as you do it. And then put up the flute. And you can practice doing different speeds with a metronome with your students to really sharpen their vibrato skills. So those are the main things you need to know about the flute. Make sure that when you swab the instrument, you go from this end to the end where your mouth is, just so you're not getting the cleaning cloth full of moisture and then putting it on the keys. It's really important to clean your flute to make sure that the keys don't get sticky, and it's almost counterproductive when you clean the most spitty part of your instrument first, and then you're kind of moving it down to the part where you really don't want spit. So yeah, this is my flute demonstration. Thank you for watching.